My best friend, Chris, said he wanted to date me. I said yes, but then he just laughed and told me I was delusional. After that, everyone started icing me out. Until one day a transfer student showed up. We got together and Chris lost his mind. I froze when Chris called. He hadn't spoken to me in 2 weeks. Did you forget what day it is? I paused, and before I could even get my thoughts straight, Chris's annoyed voice came through again. It's my birthday. You actually forgot. I'm so sorry, I forgot. The realization hit me, and I apologized immediately. Well, come over. We're at the Goldfish Lounge, room 7. After that, Chris hung up. I rushed over to the karaoke bar he mentioned. The moment I pushed open the door, I heard a familiar voice. But Leo's your boyfriend. This isn't right. I stood frozen in the doorway, watching as Chris held Jenna tightly in his arms. They were so close, anyone who didn't know better would think they were the couple. I was just messing with him. If he didn't look a bit like you, I wouldn't have even bothered. Chris frowned, his expression dripping with contempt. I was floored. I never would have imagined that's what he really thought. Just then, Jenna's eyes met mine, and she gave a sickeningly sweet smile. Well, speak of the devil. Isn't it Leo? Leo, you heard what Chris just said, right? Stop clinging to him from now on. Jenna looked at me like she'd just won a prize. And Chris just watched me, saying nothing. You guys don't know, do you? Whenever Chris talks about you to us, he sounds totally disgusted. Yeah, and didn't you try to kiss him once? Ha ha ha. So shameless. My face went pale, and I felt like I was about to collapse. Chris, did he think that too? I shifted my gaze to him, my lips trembling as I spoke. Is that what you think too? Was I wrong? Chris said it so casually, his face a complete blank. Jenna's back, and we've decided to get together. Don't be an idiot. I'm sick of looking at your face every day. I stood there, feeling like I'd just been slapped across the face. I couldn't stop myself. I grabbed the nearest glass and threw a full drink in Chris's face. I can't believe I was ever stupid enough to fall for a scumbag like you. After I said it, I slammed the glass onto the floor. Leo, what are you doing? Jenna shrieked and quickly started wiping Chris's face with a napkin. Chris stared at me, his eyes terrifying. Let's just say we're even, Leo. Yeah, we're even. And let's not see each other again. I let out a cold laugh and turned to leave. Suddenly, it started pouring outside. The cold raindrops hit my skin, making me shiver uncontrollably. As I walked down the street, I couldn't help but think about the day Chris confessed to me. The tall boy stood under the sun, his smile bright and easy. Leo, I like you. Will you go out with me? The sun was so bright it almost blinded me. But we're both guys, I stammered, my face turning beet red. I know, but love doesn't follow the rules. He just smiled, looking like some radiant god. I don't remember how I managed to say yes. The next thing I knew, he was holding me in his arms. I'm so happy, Leo. We're boyfriends. A wave of dizziness washed over me, a sweet feeling I'd never experienced before. I felt like the luckiest person alive. For 20 years, being into guys had felt like a giant weight on my chest. But that day, the weight vanished. The days I spent with Chris felt like they were soaked in honey. He was the perfect boyfriend, thoughtful, attentive, and patient with all my little moods. Every day with him was pure happiness. But the sweetness of the past only made the present that much more painful. Soaking wet, I walked through the front door of my family's house only to be met with sneers and ridicule. This family had always treated me like an outsider. Piled on top of the pain Chris had just inflicted, I felt utterly exhausted. The next day, I decided to move into the dorms to get away from everyone I didn't want to see. But some coincidences are impossible to avoid. Even just picking up takeout for lunch, I managed to run into Chris and his friends. I was waiting at the counter for my food when Chris came out of a private dining room and we nearly collided. The question in his tone was obvious. None of your business, I said flatly. Jenna followed him out, an odd look on her face. Are you stalking us because you just can't let go? She asked sarcastically. Clearly, Chris thought the same thing. The way he frowned at me was filled with repulsion. I said coolly, this is the dining hall. This is a public space. Then I turned to leave, letting them know this was just a coincidence. "Sir, your fried rice is ready." I nodded my thanks and walked away without giving them another look. But Chris kept staring at me, his gaze getting more intense. I picked up my pace, but he still caught up and called my name. He blocked my path, clearly grasping for something to say. "Aren't you allergic to seafood?" I gave a rare, bitter laugh. "Jenna's the one with the seafood allergy." Chris pressed his lips together, speechless. But when I tried to leave again, he grabbed my arm. He looked at me, struggling to get the words out. Isn't there anything you want to ask me? Why did you humiliate me in front of everyone on your birthday?" I asked. I continued, "If you wanted to break up, you could have just said so." Our eyes met. Chris's lips were sealed shut, as if the words were too difficult to say. A restless breeze blew by, but all I felt was a deep chill in my heart. Then I heard Chris say, "She hates you. You and your mom are the ones who destroyed her family." The words were like a dagger, piercing the last glimmer of light in my heart and plunging me into an abyss. After a long moment, my own voice came out, flat and dead. I asked in disbelief, "So, from the very beginning, you only got with me to help Jenna get revenge?" Chris didn't answer. He chose silence, and his silence was all the answer I needed. I gave a resigned nod. Of course, the normal state of things was that no one ever really liked me. I accepted the fact with a grim sense of finality, my heart filled with helplessness and disappointment. "I get it," I said, picking up my food and walking away. As I rounded the corner, I glanced back and saw Chris still standing there, staring in my direction. A sudden, inappropriate pang of pain hit me. It used to be me who always stood and waited for him. Now he was the one being left behind. On the night of the university's anniversary gala, I had no intention of joining the festivities, but my roommate begged and pleaded until I finally gave in. A lot of people were dressed to the nines, hoping to get a leg up in the dating pool. I, on the other hand, was just wearing a white button-down, standing quietly in a corner, completely out of place amid the glitz. Just then, I noticed a few guys and girls looking my way, some with scorn, others with a suggestive curiosity. It made me uncomfortable, and I was about to leave when Jenna blocked my path. She was holding a small plate with a few meatballs on it. "Leo, we haven't had a real chance to talk since I got back from abroad." She looked at me, but I just met her gaze, feeling like there was nothing to say. "I don't think that's necessary," I answered coldly. Jenna just smiled, brushed her hair back, and glanced to the side. Then, I saw red blotches suddenly appear on her face, an obvious allergic reaction to seafood. Before I could even react, she collapsed. The scene immediately drew everyone's attention, including Chris's. He rushed over and held Jenna, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "How could you accidentally eat seafood? I'll take you to the hospital right now, okay?" Jenna pointed a weak finger at the plate on the table. "Leo, the meatballs had shrimp in them. Why would you give them to me?" Her words trailed off as she started to cry from the discomfort. Chris's head snapped up toward me, his eyes blazing with anger and disbelief. "Leo, how could you do something so vicious?" He turned back to Jenna, his voice full of pain. "Just hang on. I'm taking you to the hospital right now." I stared at Jenna, bewildered. I couldn't understand why she would do something like this. That night, Jenna sent me a video. In it, she was lying in a hospital bed, her hand clutching Chris's. "Chris, it hurts so much," she whimpered. Chris did his best to comfort her, trying to stop her from moving around. "Don't scratch," he cooed softly. "It'll be okay, I promise." Jenna cried quietly. I could see she was in real pain, but it seemed her goal had been achieved. The heartache in Chris's eyes was about to spill over. He told Jenna, "Don't blame yourself. This is Leo's fault." After the video ended, I lit a cigarette and just sat there, thinking. I suddenly realized I had never even considered trying to explain things to Chris, because I knew he wouldn't believe me anyway. I remembered something from when Chris and I were together. I told him I realized I had issues with my sexuality a long time ago. He'd raised an eyebrow and said in a knowing tone, "Well, yeah, you were born gay." I never thought that he would use that against me one day. The chaos of the night finally died down. After finishing my cigarette, my exhausted body quickly fell asleep. When I woke up the next day and headed to class, the air was heavy with the rumble of distant thunder. It felt oppressive. I had the sense that people were glancing at me as I passed. I ran into my roommate at the entrance of the academic building. He hesitated before asking, "Are you sure you don't want to take the day off?" "What?" I asked, confused. He looked at me with a pained expression, as if something terrible had happened to me. He handed me his phone. The video on the screen instantly explained everything. In the clip, a conversation between me and Chris made my face burn. I was whispering to him, "I want to kiss you." Chris just gave a flippant smile and pinched my chin, but he didn't lean in. It was all there, a clear signal of the storm of misunderstanding and pain that was about to hit me. Chris's smile never changed, but his eyes grew cold. It was my first time trying to kiss someone. My eyelashes fluttered nervously. The instant before our lips were about to touch, Chris turned his head and dodged it. "Sorry, I'm not really comfortable with this," he said, his voice flat, but I could feel his unease. I stared at him, my hands growing stiff. Then the camera angle suddenly shifted. The person holding the camera pointed it at Chris. It was one of his friends. He grinned at the camera. "What's up, man? I was trying to film something interesting. Why'd you pull away?" Chris frowned, looking annoyed. The thought of kissing a guy just makes me sick. The video ended there. My roommate whispered to me, "Chris posted this publicly on the campus confessions page." My mind went blank. The news didn't even register at first. I couldn't process it. I knew then that all my attempts to just endure it had been useless. They were only going to get worse. The sky was dark. A low rumble of thunder sounded, and the downpour began. I don't know when it happened, but suddenly I was the only one left standing there. The rain slammed down on me without warning, fast and hard. That's when Chris appeared. He stood in the rain, his gaze calm and distant, as if he didn't think he'd done anything wrong at all. I stared at him through the sheets of rain, and my emotions finally shattered. I rushed toward Chris, knocked the umbrella from his hand, and threw a punch straight at his face. "Chris, how long are you people going to torture me?" I screamed the question, my vision blurred by the rain, all the negative feelings I'd suppressed for so long erupting at once. "Leo," Chris said, watching me break down, his voice cold, "I'm helping you atone for what you did to Jenna." His words were like a sword, stabbing me through the heart. "I regret it, Chris. I regret ever liking you. I must have been blind." "What did you say?" A violent energy, one that not even the storm could hide, suddenly rose from him. I laughed coldly and turned, walking away into the rain. I had managed to get the university to take down the video on the grounds that it violated my privacy and image rights, and I also filed a police report against Chris and his cronies. After that, they quieted down for a while, and it seemed like everything was back to normal. But then Chris and Jenna made their relationship public, and I became the butt of everyone's jokes. It happened during a lecture for 2 combined classes. Chris sat in the middle of the room with Jenna, surrounded by his cheering friends. The main point of the class was for each group to present their PowerPoint. Whether by coincidence or design, Jenna's topic was perspectives on homosexuality. She stood at the podium, her eyes sweeping past me to land on Chris. "Chris," she asked, "how would you feel if a gay man publicly declared his feelings for you?" The room went quiet. A lot of eyes turned to me. Without even glancing at me, Chris played along with her little game. His tone was cold, tinged with a sneer, disgusted. But in the next second, Jenna unexpectedly called on me. "So, Leo, do you agree with Chris's point of view?" Ever since the video incident, I rarely felt embarrassed anymore. I stood up calmly and looked right at her. "Before I answer that, let me ask you something. You're left-handed, which means your right hand doesn't have much of a primary function. Would you chop it off?" Jenna's plan was probably to humiliate me in public, but now she was the one on the spot. She must have held a grudge from class, because after it ended, she silently positioned herself behind me in the crowded hallway. As I reached the top of the stairs, she ducked out of the camera's view and kicked me from behind. I tumbled down the stairs in front of everyone. I wasn't seriously hurt, though, and managed to limp back to my feet. People around me gasped. What happened? My advisor happened to walk by and saw Jenna smiling innocently. I tried to explain, but Jenna beat me to it with her version of events. Professor, Leo fell down the stairs on his own. Before I could even argue, she continued, Leo and I are practically family. I would never lie about him. I let out a cold laugh, just loud enough for everyone to turn their attention to me. Just then, Chris walked up to my side and warned me in a low voice, if Jenna gets hurt again because of you, I will make you pay. He threatened, you know I can make your next 2 years of college worse than a stray dog's life. I turned my head to look at him. What are you threatening me now? Go ahead, I said. You might as well just kill me. With that, I walked away without looking back. However, the matter didn't end the way I wanted. Chris's father was a major trustee of the university, and he made the whole incident disappear. My leg injury made it hard to get around, and I looked pathetic trying to climb the stairs in the academic building. Once again, I ran into Chris and Jenna. They looked down on me from the landing above like I was a clown. Jenna smiled slightly. Oh, I'm so sorry. When my dad found out I accidentally pushed you, he gave me a talking to. I guess that's his way of getting justice for you. A hairline fracture, and the man who called himself my father gave her nothing more than a gentle scolding. As Chris passed me, he sneered, You? Do I even need to be the one to finish you off? I gave him a cold look, my heart filled with endless rage and helplessness. While the campus simmered with unspoken tension and my leg was still healing, a new post appeared on the confessions page. It was something like this. A transfer student was asking for help. He wanted to meet a guy in the computer science department. He described him as exceptionally good-looking but couldn't remember much else. He was asking if the guy was single, and if so, could he pursue him? Everyone was guessing who the transfer student was. Someone mentioned that Chris had been in a foul mood for days, trying to figure out which department the new guy was in. Then, during a big public lecture, a tall guy stopped next to my seat. He asked, Hey, is this spot taken? I shook my head, and the guy sat down. He smiled and said, Finally found you. During the lecture, the confessions page updated, Hey guys, you can stop looking. I found him. He's sitting right next to me. Soon, heads started turning our way, including Chris's. His dark gaze was locked on me, but a second later, the guy next to me blocked his view. The guy introduced himself.
Hey, I'm Luke.
Luke was incredibly direct. He just showed me the confessions page on his phone and told me honestly that it was love at first sight. But after everything that had happened recently, my first thought was that this was just another prank. So I quickly looked away from his phone and said politely but distantly, I'm sorry, but I'm not interested. Luke calmly turned off his phone and smiled. Well, I guess I'll just have to figure out how to win you over. Then, I looked at him for a couple of seconds. There was something so familiar about his laid-back confidence. On an impulse, I asked, Are you into guys? Luke shook his head. I'm into you. What does sexuality have to do with it? His answer was identical to what Chris had once said. I let out a small, bitter laugh and didn't take his words to heart. After class, I quickly grabbed my books and limped away, trying to avoid the stares from Luke and other curious onlookers. But Chris still caught up to me. What were you two talking about? He asked, his eyes full of suspicion. Is that any of your business? I retorted coldly. He didn't get angry like he usually did. He just stared at me hard. After a long moment, he asked a question that took me by surprise. Leo, why aren't you a girl? I couldn't help but laugh. Chris, are you trying to start a fight? He suddenly took a step closer. I instinctively stepped back, accidentally twisting my injured leg. Seeing my pained expression, he immediately asked with concern, Is your leg still not healed? I frowned. How did he know my leg was hurt? He looked at me, his expression turning serious. Let me carry you to the campus clinic, okay? He reached out a hand, as if to pull me. I didn't move. I just said his name calmly. Chris. He froze, the wind gently lifting the corner of his jacket. I suddenly noticed he was wearing the same outfit he'd worn the first time we met. But the flutter of excitement I'd felt back then was completely gone. He looked at me, a hint of confusion in his eyes. What are you doing now? slapping me around and then trying to offer me a piece of candy? I stared at him and didn't answer. He looked at me, a lost expression in his eyes. I'm not, but he didn't finish. The silence between us thickened. He pressed his lips together, then let out a self-deprecating laugh. You probably won't believe this, he said, his voice laced with bitterness. But this is most likely a habit I picked up from when we were together. I didn't say anything, just watched him quietly. He took a step back, his gaze toward me becoming dark and unreadable. If a guy falls for the exact type of person he's always hated, doesn't that make him a real asshole? After asking, he immediately looked down, as if waiting for my answer. I looked at him and smiled faintly. Yes. I answered without hesitation. You really are an asshole. His eyes instantly dimmed. He then tugged at the corner of his mouth and forced a casual smile. I see. After that, Chris didn't show up in front of me for a long time. I didn't dwell on what happened that day, because I knew that whatever had been between me and Chris was over. Luke started showing up more and more, even seeping into my personal life. He even appeared in my dorm room. He stood in front of my bed with his suitcase and said in a drawling, playful tone, "Oh, Leo, looks like your bunk is right across from mine." His gaze was so suggestive it was impossible not to read into it. Our dorm room was a quad, usually all guys. Strangely, on his first night, he shamelessly hung up a bed curtain. Before lights out, he turned on his side to look at me, his voice low. Leo. Our other two roommates happened to be in the bathroom, so it was just the two of us. His voice made me uneasy. I turned to face the wall, my back to him. But he kept talking anyway. This is our first night together. Good night. The next day, Luke and I had the same class, so we left the dorm together, only to find Chris waiting at the door. We hadn't seen him in 2 weeks. His eyes darted back and forth between us, his face growing darker by the second. I'm curious, what's the reason for transferring colleges? He asked Luke, but his eyes were on me. I was surprised he already knew about what had happened between me and Chris. A sarcastic smile played on Luke's lips. It's definitely not because I'm some straight guy pretending to be gay to mess with someone's feelings and then bully them. A flash of anger crossed Chris's face. He then looked at me coldly. Leo, you're fine being roommates with someone who's obviously scheming to get with you? His voice was full of accusation. And going to class with him? I was holding a cigarette and rubbed my temples, my voice laced with impatience. Could you please drop the accusatory tone? I ignored his questions and turned to leave. Chris didn't say another word, silently stepping aside to let us pass. But just as I'd taken a couple of steps, his voice called out to me again. For the 2 weeks I was gone, I took Jenna on a trip abroad. We went racing. We did almost everything a couple could do. I kept telling myself that if I just had a normal relationship, if I just didn't see you, then those strange thoughts would go away. But the truth is, every single day I was away from this school, I was thinking about you. Beside me, Luke let out an annoyed sigh. Then I heard Chris build up to his conclusion. Leo, I don't know how to say this, but I've actually fallen for you. For you, I've become the very thing I used to hate, a gay man. Chris's confession was completely unexpected, but his condescending attitude hadn't changed one bit. It was as if falling for me was some huge concession on his part, as if I should be grateful. Chris walked closer, circling around to face me. His tone was almost cautious. I know I did a lot of things to hurt you, and you won't forgive me easily, so I'm going to try to win you back. Is that okay? I studied the expression on his face like I was analyzing a research paper. Compared to the first time, he did seem much more sincere. But I didn't believe him anymore. But, Chris, I looked up at him and asked, isn't it annoying to be pursued by the person you despise the most? Like Chris once was, or like I was now. Luke laughed out loud, as if mocking his naivete. Chris didn't have an answer, but that didn't mean he gave up. That night, when I got back to the dorm from the library, my roommate's spot next to mine was gone. Chris was there instead. Luke was furious. The tension between them made the room feel suffocating. It got so bad that our other roommate started avoiding the dorm just to get away from them. Most of the time, my roommate Chris and I managed to coexist peacefully, not bothering each other. However, one time when I was getting ready to shower, Chris started acting strange, like he wanted to say something but couldn't. He seemed agitated, his brow furrowed, as he blocked my way. "Leo, do you know about this communal shower? It's packed with people at this hour." I nodded, but he kept going. "Let me take you somewhere else to shower, okay?" I shook my head and took a step back. "Will you just stop? What do you want?" I asked, my patience wearing thin. Chris looked annoyed, but his eyes darted away guiltily. "It was one thing before," he continued, "but Leo, after that video got out, everyone knows you're gay." His words surprised me. I retorted, "There are no gay guys on this floor." Chris's face grew even paler. He seemed to want to apologize but didn't know how. I didn't know they'd go that far. I cut him off. "Well, now you know. So can you stay away from me?" I tried to keep my voice steady, because right now, seeing a clingy gay guy like you just makes me sick. Chris's eyes reddened. He asked in a low voice, "Is it true that no matter what I do to make it up to you, you'll never forgive me?" I found the whole thing absurd. "Chris, if you were me, would you forgive someone like you?" He lowered his head and didn't answer. The next day, I went to the library first thing in the morning. When I returned to the dorm, I found that Chris was gone. My old roommate was back in his spot. It was disorienting, as if Chris had never been there at all. Jenna came looking for me once because of Chris. That night, she cornered me just as I was leaving the library. The library was about to close, and there were barely any people on the path. Her voice was filled with anger and disappointment. "Leo, you turned Chris gay. You must be so proud of yourself, right?" She continued, "He dumped me. Are you finally happy now that you get to see me become a joke?" I just looked at her, silent. I didn't want to waste my time talking to her. But when she saw I was about to ignore her and walk away, she completely lost it. She grabbed my sleeve and raised her hand to slap me. I quickly blocked it, twisted her arm, and shoved her against the wall. I didn't hold back, and her back hit the wall hard. I let out a soft sneer and walked slowly toward her. "Jenna, your mother really spoiled you rotten, didn't she?" "You're an idiot," I mocked. She looked at me warily. "What do you want?" I reached out and gently tucked a stray strand of her hair behind her ear. "It's so late," I said casually, "and this just happens to be a camera blind spot. It would be so easy for me to do whatever I want to you, right?" As I spoke, my fingertips slid down to her shoulder and began tracing small circles. "You don't like guys, do you?" I watched her, waiting for an answer. Her earlier arrogance was gone, replaced by a forced composure. She didn't dare move an inch. I smiled gently, my fingers stroking the side of her neck. "I'm gay, but that doesn't mean I can't still do something to you. Does it?" Jenna struggled fruitlessly, tears already welling in her eyes.
I'm sorry, Leo.
"Please don't do this. We're family, we're related by blood," she begged. The hand on her neck tightened slightly. "Don't ever come looking for me again," I said coldly. "Do you understand me, sister? Otherwise, you better make sure you're never, ever alone." I added more force to my words. The fear on her face was impossible to hide. She nodded frantically. I took a step back and let her go. I watched coolly as Jenna scrambled away. Just as I was about to leave myself, someone stepped out from the shadows nearby. "I never knew you had such a badass side." Luke wiggled his phone and grinned. "I couldn't get a hold of you, so I figured I'd try the library since it's so late." Luke's actions sent a ripple through me. This unexpected flutter of my heart wasn't the first time it had happened. Although I was a bit resistant, Luke didn't seem to mind. In fact, he seemed to enjoy it. I didn't quite understand some of Luke's habits, like how he always avoided the showers when I was in there, only to be standing right outside the door when I came out. Luke's explanation was that even though I said everyone on the floor was straight, he was still worried about some pervert trying to peek, so he felt better waiting outside until I was done. That night, the moon cast a soft, hazy glow, blanketing everything in a dreamlike mist. It felt like Luke and I were the only two people in the world. But Jenna's hatred for me wasn't something that could be erased with a few words. Although she hadn't shown her resentment publicly, I knew she hadn't let me off the hook that easily. When I was getting harassed by a group of big guys in the cafeteria, Jenna was nowhere in sight. Faced with this situation, I knew I needed to find a way to confront Jenna and resolve the problem between us. Even though I didn't know how yet, I had to try. I had to find an answer. Sorry, I said, just trying to de-escalate things. But the guy in front of me had no intention of letting me off that easy. You think a simple sorry is going to fix this? He asked. Right now, you have two choices. Either you go back to that counter and buy out everything they have, he continued, or you get on your knees and lick the floor clean. Then I'll accept your apology. How about it? This kind of vicious bullying reminded me of someone. I raised my eyes and scanned the faces of the guys in front of me. Did Jenna send you? I asked directly. They were clearly surprised I'd figured it out so quickly. I studied them carefully. They looked familiar. I racked my brain trying to place them while stalling for time. You know I can report you for public bullying, right? I reminded them. Do you really want that on your permanent record before you even graduate? The leader, a big, brawny guy, hesitated. He was clearly all muscle and no brains. I happened to notice calluses on their hands, all in roughly the same spot, and it suddenly clicked. I think I've seen you guys at the sports club. You're freshmen, right? I asked. The big guy grunted a non-committal Members of the sports club could waive their elective credits if they completed 2 years in the club. And as it happened, the president of the sports club was my roommate. How much is Jenna paying you? Can't be more than a few meals worth of cash. I can get you out of your electives completely. How does that sound? I asked. Tell me, I pressed, what did Jenna want you to do to me? The big guy hesitated, weighed his options, and decided to switch sides. She told us to either beat you up or make you lick the food off the floor, he revealed. I managed a detached smile and was about to say something when Luke's furious voice boomed from behind me. Lick my ass. He must have only heard that last part and thought I was being cornered. Without a second thought, he grabbed a leftover tray from a nearby table and slammed it right in the big guy's face. I just stood there. Seriously? I had it all under control. After a brief scuffle, the big guy was holding his bloody nose, looking like he was about to cry. Luke, by himself, had taken on 4 athletes and, against all odds, won. His eyes shone with the kind of brash confidence unique to young guys. He was proudly boasting about his victory, seemingly forgetting his own injuries. His stamina was incredible. Even covered in bruises, he could still flash a brilliant smile. His bragging prompted me to correct him. His victory wasn't quite as glorious as he made it out to be. I looked at Luke. He seemed a little deflated but quickly bounced back. He was practically wagging his tail like a puppy begging for praise. It was impossible to resist. I smiled and didn't tell him I was about to solve the problem myself. I didn't want to crush his confidence. Back in the dorm that night, he was exhausted and went straight to the showers. But not long after he went in, the water suddenly shut off. Worried, I went to check on him using my phone's flashlight. I found him standing in the dark, soap in his eyes, unable to see. Need some help? He hesitated when he heard my voice, then asked me to grab him a towel. I brought the towel in, the flashlight beam aimed right at his face. I looked at him, not turning away. He took the towel, and I was about to turn and leave when I slipped on the wet floor and fell, landing right in front of him. We stared at each other. The awkwardness was unbearable. I was speechless, and Luke didn't seem to have anything to say either. Then, as if to break the silence, he walked over to a sink and quickly rinsed his hair with tap water. We walked back to the dorm in silence. On the way, Luke suddenly spoke up. So I look okay, right? I was a little surprised. He seemed almost insecure about his appearance. You're already way above the national average. He seemed to let out a breath of relief at my answer, then added in a small voice, I looked up the data and everything. I almost choked. Some things in my life had changed. Luke and I had grown closer without me even realizing it. But there was always this undefinable, ambiguous feeling between us, like a thin veil that could be torn away at any moment. I felt hesitant whenever I confronted these emotions. Everything changed the next time I saw Chris. He had publicly come out and was now dating a freshman. I don't know if it was my imagination, but I couldn't help but think the guy looked a little like me. And because of this, Jenna had become a laughingstock. I used the elective course credits as a bargaining chip and had the brawny guy from the cafeteria post a detailed account of Jenna's bullying on the confessions page. Her reputation was ruined, and the university even suspended her for a year. I heard her mother, who cares more about appearances than anything else, dragged her home and basically put her under house arrest for a long time. There were even rumors she was going to drop out. One evening, Luke and I were taking a walk after dinner and ended up near the small grove by campus. The sounds of a couple making out made us stop in our tracks. Luke rubbed the back of his neck and suggested, maybe we should walk somewhere else? I nodded, but just as I took a step, I heard a familiar voice. The person making out in the woods was Chris. Luke whipped his head around. Then, another guy's broken responses echoed from the darkness. I felt sick to my stomach. I was about to back away and wait for them to finish, but Luke had already stormed in. "Chris, you're disgusting," he yelled. Chris groaned as he hit the ground. Luke was on top of him, pinning him down and punching him. "Luke, let's go. He's gotten what he deserves." Getting ambushed like that, some things might not work right for the rest of his life. Luke's eyes were red, and he looked at me, whining. "You were supposed to like me. I forgot to get your number, and I forgot to ask your name before I left. And then you fell for someone else." By the end, he was on the verge of tears. Why was a guy who was almost 6'3" so sensitive? I reached up and cupped his face in my hands. I soothed him with a gentle voice. "It's okay, Luke. It's not too late for me to like you now, is it?" His eyes widened. "What did you say?" I could almost see a tail wagging behind him. I said, "Luke, do you want to be my boyfriend?" The tears in the guy's eyes vanished instantly. He nodded eagerly. His tail wagged nonstop. I took the initiative and held his hand. "Leo, I like you," he said, his voice suddenly serious. "Luke told me it really was love at first sight. The essence of love at first sight is superficial. But Luke showed me something. He showed me that love at first sight and a love that lasts forever can actually be the same thing.